Big show this morning, lots to talk about. Joining the conversation, Fox Business's Dagen McDowell, Kingview Asset Management Chief Investment Officer, Fox News contributor Scott Martin is with us this morning, and the Brewer Group CEO, former investment banker, and former NFL star Jack Brewer. Great to see you this morning.
All right, great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, here we are looking at futures, which are lower this morning, going into another week. This is an important week because we're going to begin third quarter earnings, and that's going to really give us a pretty good window into what's going on in the economy. And for corporates, the Dow and the S&P 500 trying to snap a 3-week losing streak, with all eyes on the China trade meetings this week on Thursday. The two sides expected to resume the negotiations Thursday. Beijing reportedly ready to talk about a narrow focus deal, narrower than we've been talking about, with full-scale reform of its industrial sector off the table. So what's your reaction to this, given the fact that the president has been real adamant about the industrial issues and the behavior of China, particularly with its theft of intellectual property?
More of the same. And markets clearly not liking it, Maria. I mean, listen, the pressure's on. Certainly, Hong Kong's not getting any better. The Chinese economy certainly isn't getting any better. Our economy, depending on how you look at it, is certainly, I think, being affected to one way or another. So the interesting thing to me, though, is when does this end? I mean, we've had this back and forth. We've had the meetings and then not the meetings. We've had the agreements, then not the agreements. I mean, gosh, at some point, aren't we going to come to the table together and finally say, okay, we're either going to do a deal or we're not?
Yeah.
But if you're China, I mean, and you see all this impeachment talk, and you see things that are going on here in our markets, that's got to be playing a role right now. I don't think there's any way that we get a trade deal done before Election Day 2020.
You don't, because these issues are too important in terms of the intellectual property. It seems now that Beijing, though, is bullying certain companies. I mean, there was an app on the Apple Store that brought together Hong Kong protesters. Apple was bullied into banning that app. Now, it reversed its decision. You can buy the app on the Apple Store now, but it actually had to think about it. And then you've got this story about the NBA. The NBA facing backlash. The Houston Rockets general manager under pressure because he tweeted support for the Hong Kong protesters. That caused a major uproar in China, where the Rockets are extremely popular. Chinese sponsors, businesses all pulled support. The Chinese government made a comment: "We are not going to support the Rockets." NBA spokesperson responded, quoting, "The values of the league support individuals educating themselves and sharing their views on matters important to them. We have great respect for the history and culture of China and hope that sports and the NBA can be used as a unifying force to bridge cultural divide." Jack, how do you see it?
You know, I've spent a lot of time in China with both the NFL China and the NBA China. And I got to tell you, China is actually a bigger market potential than the United States for the NBA. So this is kind of scary for them right now. They poured a lot of resources, and they're having games there every summer. The players are using China as one of their biggest markets for branding. There's so many big-time NBA players that are traveling to China every year. And so this is really not good for the NBA. You know, this is where our American values have to get put before the dollar.
It's not good for the NBA because this is the height of hypocrisy.
Yes.
Where the NBA is a champion of social justice here in the United States, and they have completely rolled over for China. The statement they put out was utter horse manure, and they have united all of the fans here in the United States. Don't make the communists mad, the country that has imprisoned 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps, that controls the internet, that controls speech in the nation, that spies on its own citizens through AI and facial recognition, that is stealing from the United States. And the NBA has the audacity to go after one of the managers who had the guts to speak out in favor of Hong Kong. The NBA has completely fouled up in addressing
Nice term there. I mean, fouled up, that's good.
With you. Look, the
technical
general manager is Daryl Morey, and he apologized this morning.
That was the thing.
For the tweet. He deleted the tweet over the weekend, but his support for the protests in China and I'm sorry, in Hong Kong angered the leadership in Beijing.
And that's the thing, Maria, though, too. I think when you look at China and how they factor into all this with respect to that tweet, heartbeat. China wants control of everything. It's just back to the trade stuff, Jack. I mean, China wants control of every facet of this deal. And it's just like the NBA comments. I mean, China is not liking, obviously, the support maybe that was given for Hong Kong. They're upset. They want to control the Hong Kong situation, which they're losing control of, by the way, as we saw just the last week.
I mean, the Rockets were so followed in China after they drafted Yao Ming back in 2002. He became the star. He helped the NBA really break through China. That made the NBA so successful in China.
But we also should point out that Joseph Tsai is one of the billionaire co-founders of Alibaba, the Chinese e-commerce giant, and he is now the owner of the Brooklyn Nets. And he came out and said the hurt this incident has caused will take a long time to repair. But the issue for fans is the NBA has, for example, didn't play the All-Star game in North Carolina because of the transgender bathroom ban, which was ultimately rescinded. But again, they have been very vocal about things that they were not happy with, rightfully so, but then you're siding with a country, a communist nation that wants to destroy the United States. Yeah. You're taking the side of communism over democracy.
That's
for money,
right?
I mean,
that's our money. And you know, you mentioned the Uyghurs.
It's all about money, Jack.
You mentioned the Uyghurs. Right. And, you know, you wonder how much of the human rights behavior is sort of the elephant in the room while they're doing these trade talks on Thursday, because you're right, they've rounded up 1 million Muslims, and I understand it's looking like it could be 2 million, because there's a whole other portion of people that have not yet gone to the actual concentration camps, or what they're calling re-education camps, that you can't study Muslim, you can't have any other religion other than what the Chinese want you to have. And there's this story that I mentioned a minute ago. Apple reportedly banning an app that allows Hong Kong protesters to track other protesters and police movements in the city-state, despite increasing international condemnation against the violence used by authorities. Apple reversed the decision. You can buy that app on the Apple Store.
Great.
But this is the kind of bullying. Why? Because CEOs for way too long were looking at China as a major business opportunity and not recognizing that, okay, we want market access. We want to sell to 1.4 billion people.
Silver, the head of the NBA,
he said,
it's an Orwellian nightmare in China. But so where's Adam Silver been as this has been exposed?
That's what the world is seeing from us right now. We're putting money before everything. Yeah. Look at what's happening with President Trump right now. He's calling out these corrupt politicians. We create a culture on our liberal side of our policies where we're allowing people to come into office poor and leave rich, and no one says anything about it. I mean, you look time and time again, it's the same thing. We're putting the dollar over our American values.
Which is why I have a problem with Google having its AI lab in Beijing.
Totally.
I'm sorry, I have a problem with this.
It's dangerous.
I mean, this country is the reason that Google is as successful as it is. You have become enriched because of America, and you walk away from the deal with the Pentagon, and then you do business with the Chinese, and you have an AI lab in Beijing.
You're selling out, Maria, and I think to a point you made earlier, this just shows how complicated these trade talks are getting. I mean, think about the twists and turns that these talks are having, or the implications of just the NBA incident, for example, and what that does to these negotiations.
In my view, the president cannot have any twists and turns.
Nope.
He needs to stick to the moral authority that this country holds, and stick to your guns in terms of intellectual property and all the other things, human behavior and the human rights abuses as well. You mentioned the president. Let's talk about this impeachment inquiry. Attorneys representing the CIA officer behind the whistleblower complaint now says there's another whistleblower. I spoke with Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. Here's his reaction. You have subpoena power, Chairman of Judiciary. Are you going to subpoena this whistleblower?
Well, here's what's going to happen. If the whistleblower's allegations are turned into an impeachment article, it's imperative that the whistleblower be interviewed in public under oath and cross-examined. Nobody in America goes to jail or has anything done to them without confronting their accuser. So here's what I'm going to insist upon, that the whistleblower, one or two, whatever, they come forward under oath, testify so the public can judge her credibility. If that doesn't happen in the House, I will make sure it happens in the Senate.
There was contact between the whistleblower and either Adam Schiff and his team on the Intelligence Committee. He needs to be put under oath. He needs to answer the questions. And again, that is the reason that he should not be allowed to run the investigation where he and his team are central fact witnesses.
So we're going to talk to Kevin McCarthy this morning, Minority Leader. He's basically saying Adam Schiff needs to go. One of the issues that they were both talking about, Lindsey Graham and John Ratcliffe, is this impeachment inquiry is happening in the Intel Committee, where the jurisdiction of any impeachment is typically in the Judiciary Committee. That's one. Number two, they're doing everything behind closed doors. We had those really important testimonies last week, right, of Kurt Volker, of Atkinson, and we don't know anything about it because they're behind closed doors. And number three, Adam Schiff is a fact witness because he said he didn't meet with the whistleblower. But in fact, he did meet with the whistleblower before the complaint was even made. So my question is, did he coach this person for what to say the way he coached Christine Blasey Ford on Brett Kavanaugh? Dagan.
This is impeachment by fiat by Nancy Pelosi not taking it to a vote. That is why you will see the White House push back on the request for information, the request to speak with individuals, because, again, it flies in the face of what is, she said there's no precedent. There is a precedent. It's called Nixon and Clinton, where you had a vote by the entire House authorized the Judiciary Committee to move ahead with an impeachment inquiry. That is what history, modern history, tells us. And she's trying to do an end around. And so it goes to, although constitutionally the House is not required to do a full vote, it does beg the question legally whether a White House would have to comply with this request for information if you haven't taken it to a full vote.
Right.
That will be the ultimate stumbling block. And I would expect, if Nancy Pelosi won't get the Democrats to vote on it in the House, to essentially launch it, define the parameters of the investigation, the powers that exist, then you will have a court fight by the White House at every turn on every request for information and every subpoena. That's what's going to happen.
Well, you heard what Lindsey Graham just said yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. If they continue to do this inquiry in the Intel Committee, where everything is done behind closed doors, he will demand that the whistleblower comes out, speak publicly in the Judiciary, Senate Judiciary. So we'll see about that. But this is obviously, you can't impeach a president behind closed doors.
It's unbelievable.
Duly elected.
Duly elected president.
All right, we'll take a short break. There is a lot going on this morning. We have a huge